And now we come to the imaginings of this man here. Arthur C. Clarke, Freemason and science fiction writer, came up with the concept of the telecommunications satellite. And several years later, we have thousands of telecommunications satellites supposedly spinning around the planet. Again though, strangely enough, if you try and look for images of communication satellites, despite the fact that there are thousands of these things up there, you don't actually find a photograph of them. Just lots and lots of CGI photoshopped images. The problem is that satellites inhabit a region of the upper atmosphere known as the thermosphere. It gets its name because the temperatures up there reach something in the order of 2,500 degrees centigrade. This is a source of some confusion. Although Wikipedia says that it reaches such high temperatures, it also says, paradoxically, that you wouldn't actually feel the heat because there's not enough air molecules up there to heat you up. Yeah, right. Doesn't quite work like that. The vacuum of space is actually a perfect insulator, which is why we use a vacuum barrier in thermos flasks. The heat from the inside cannot be conducted or convected to the outside. The sun's radiation does not actually heat space up. As I said, the vacuum is a perfect insulator. The sun's radiation traverses space until it hits some object. And when it does, that object absorbs the heat and the temperature rises and keeps rising. And without an atmosphere to conduct or convect the heat away, the temperature will rise up to and over 2,500 degrees. So the Hubble telescope, for instance, would look something like this. All the satellites and the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station, they would all be molten slabs of metal spinning around in orbit. But let's put that aside for a moment. There are supposedly between 25,000 and 50,000 satellites in orbit. But let's have a look at some videos supposedly from the International Space Station. Can you see any one of these 26,000 to 50,000 satellites? I can't. Commands a substantial view over the Earth's surface, and yet you don't see a single satellite. Now, I do accept that you can look up into the night sky and see what we're told are satellites. I've done it myself. I've seen bright lights moving across the sky, but I have no idea what those things are. In this video, you can see several large bright objects. However, none of them appear on any satellite tracking applications. When you look up at a jet airliner flying at 35,000 feet, you can only see it as a small dot. So how is it if something the size of a jumbo jet is rendered as a small dot at about 5 to 7 miles up, that you can see a satellite which is the size of between a car and a school bus at 100 miles away? You just wouldn't see it. At about this point, somebody's bound to say, what about the global positioning system? How would that work without satellites? Well, as it happens, the technology has actually been around since World War II. There are actually two systems, one called LORAN and another called Decca. Those were navigation systems based on radio triangulation. Now, the GPS systems that we're used to now are basically the same systems, just improved with a new computer interface. Similarly, the international telephone traffic that's supposedly handled by satellites are handled by undersea fibre optic cables. Shortwave radio can also span large distances and also be bounced off the ionosphere. So, in the absence of any hard physical evidence, I submit that satellites are just a work of fiction and another way that NASA and the US military managed to con the American public out of billions of dollars.